All right, welcome back to another episode of Buy or Sell What the Hell. I know we've been on break for a little bit. There hasn't really been much movement in the markets. I think Bitcoin is the next stable coin, more stable than Tether, it seems, lately. It's really stuck at that 6,500 level for the
That's for
last
sure.
few weeks, I think. What are you guys seeing in the markets? Jason and Brennan and
Oh
Chris
yeah,
are
kind
on.
of a whole lot of nothing. Kind of still hurry up and wait, I guess. We've just been stuck in this long-term consolidation. Whether you want to classify it as a descending triangle or a wedge, it's all the same technical stuff. Just long-term lower highs every month. We seem to just ratchet it down. But hopefully, we're getting close to kind of the apex. There's only so much sideways consolidation or coiling we can do before we get a one way move one way or the other. Hopefully, it's to the upside.
Yeah.
Markets today have been pretty. The overall markets have been pretty crazy. Um, we've had a pretty good call. Talking about volatility, hopefully returning in October, November. We haven't seen it in the Bitcoin market, but today S&Ps are down. I don't know how many handles through 28.65. You've seen the dollars strengthen again the last couple of weeks. Oil's finally starting to make lower highs and rolling over. So there's kind of a lot of risk off, and the VIX has gone from 12 to 15, 16. We've been long some VIX futures and kind of think it's going to be more of the same into the end of the year. Brennan, what are your thoughts? Hopefully BTC can kind of wake up along with the rest of the other markets.
Yeah, I think in this kind of sideways market, that you're seeing, we are still kind of seeing lower highs, but we're also seeing, the triangulation of higher lows. As you pull up Bitcoin over the last month, it's only up 3.64%. That's not a whole lot for traders to really, play with. I personally have been trading significantly less, but it's also kind of enabled me a little bit more time to try to research some newer coins, some new technology, things that I can really sink my teeth into a little bit deeper. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to a little bit more volatility, especially as the news constantly talks about how volatile the crypto markets are, which have been a bit anemic the last couple months.
No, looking at the futures, we've had last week, which is the week of second week of October. The range from the high to low on week over week has been the smallest it's been since futures started trading.
That's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Yeah, the markets have been kind of sitting still, but that doesn't mean the infrastructure hasn't really been sitting still, right? One day after the next, we're seeing new projects come to market, new systems putting in place, new on ramp, off ramp, everything for crypto, really. For instance, just the other day, we saw the first, what I think is going to be the next spark, at least. I think a lot of people agree that the next spark may not necessarily be Bitcoin related. It might be tokenized securities. We keep seeing this as the infrastructure, becomes a little bit better. The costs and the time and the resource restrictions put on place to securitize tokens it hasn't really been there, right? It's been too expensive, too much time, and we're seeing projects left and right that are, being those first ones to actually tokenize something real. So we saw last week, I think it was, a $30 million real estate property tokenized, a Manhattan property tokenized. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I know you come from a little bit of a real estate background too, Brennan. So, do you have any thoughts on that? That seems like a decent sized property. If I'm not mistaken there.
Yeah, no, listen, New York real estate is, I think has that market softened over the last year or two a little bit, but still the numbers are significantly larger than you would see in almost any other city outside of San Francisco. I've tried to pay attention a little bit, to this world as well, and I've been doing a little bit of homework on, who's doing, tokens backed by real estate type of thing, and I think you're right. I think that Propeller and Fluidity, the merger of those two companies coming together on this $30 million Manhattan property for sale is interesting because they're doing it right. Utility tokens obviously can't do it. Security tokens are the only way, to engage in this space. And I think it's going to add a lot of, I think it's going to, open the marketplace for a lot of people to kind of get involved to whether they want to do real estate or whether they want to do art. or any other type of asset. And I think it's healthy for the marketplace too. When you're looking, at a lot of the a lot of the ICOs that have failed this year, and a lot of people want to engage in the space, but would rather see a token really backed by something. So I think that this is a really interesting market, and it's certainly something to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, tokenization kind of creates more liquidity for these real world assets. With some sort of compliant tokenized standard, there's the option for these peer-to-peer liquidity pools and these secondary markets that just weren't available before for these private securities.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the words, the words security pool, or liquidity pools, because I do think that is going to be, I think that is going to be one of the major movers in the market. This year has been a massive year of innovation and new companies coming online with different types of ideas, and it's been it's been a lot to try to digest, and I know I generally tend to gravitate towards the things that really interest me, and that's a smaller percentage of the marketplace. But I think that this is this is a really good space. I mean, it almost feels like your old guard securities, or assets that you can actually put a value to, and really digest if you're buying something right or wrong. Whereas, Bitcoin, Ethereum, a lot of these major coins, it's really difficult to value them. So I think this is going to be a really interesting space to kind of pay attention to.
And then it's kind of interesting too, because you're talking about Ethereum, Bitcoin, how you value those, and then these tokenized securities are easy to value, right? Because there are models in place for these real assets. But then you have the whole dynamic of those assets being securitized on top of Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that kind of, I don't know how that price dynamic is going to play out. But when you have all these different all these different assets secured on top of those base chains then become more valuable themselves, along with being more secure and robust.
Exactly, and you're opening the marketplace to, for everybody to really engage in these things. I mean, Jason, I mean, we spend a lot of time, on Wall Street proper, and I was never pitched a commercial real estate idea. I might have enjoyed diversifying my portfolio a little bit into something like that, but it never came my way, which is shocking, because that was my life, was the investment of assets, and a variety of different asset classes. So I think unless you're in that small slice of the pie that got the look on a lot of these deals, you're now really opening up to anybody who wanted to invest, because fractions of tokens are able to be purchased. You're offering initial investors. You're not really, you're really looking at the real estate, or art world, or what have you. You're really looking at the ability to invest in certain asset classes that might not, the doors might not have been open to you. So now you've taken a narrow slice of that pie that gets those looks, and you're really opening up to the globe, as long as somebody's ready to do the homework. The one thing that I'd like to see people write on a little bit more is how people can actually value them, right? I mean, when you go to some of these sites, it would be wildly helpful to have a financials page, and maybe mandate, if a company is going to have a security token, backed by a real estate asset, mandating that they, maybe, on a quarterly basis, disclose financials. Did you take over an old project and rehab it? And, did you raise rents, in an office space or an apartment complex? Are you doing what you say you're going to do, which should then, equate to the value of that token actually going higher, because your NOI has changed. So, I'm excited about this type of a space to really come to the marketplace, because I think it's going to allow individuals and institutions globally to diversify their portfolios in a manner that they haven't been able to before, unless they were part of that narrow slice.
Yeah, what are you guys thinking, Chris and Jason? I mean, do you guys kind of view security tokens as that next step? Or, I mean, I think it's also important to remember too that, and really look forward, that most security tokens, and I really do think the majority of them are going to be really low quality projects, or, even outright scams. But I think it's going to be less so than an ICO. Just because, with the utility token, these ICOs, what is that project? What's that company? Who's that issuer? They don't they're not promised these users or these buyers of the tokens. They don't get anything. They're not represented in any way. They're not promised anything. These projects have free reign without any sort of promise to these to uphold anything to these token holders or coin holders. So I think you're going to see less, but I think it's still important, to say that we're still going to see quite a lot.
Yeah, I think this longer term, it's going to take time. I think longer term, you're going to have a lot of assets on tokenized or some sort of digital form on the blockchain, and everything's moving to digital ledger technologies. And when Brennan was talking about the real estate stuff, we had guys on our desk, and we were down in South Florida in 2008, 2009. We were guys buying condos, timed it really well. There was maybe one crane down there in Miami, and now you go down there, there's probably 12 or 14 cranes I counted between South Beach and the downtown area. And they're kind of late cycle, but I think that if and when we ever do have another recession, the next time you'll be buying those types of opportunities is going to be in some sort of, tokenized fashion. I think that's by the time that next buying opportunity comes, I think you will see a lot of it's tokenized. And then to your point, Alec, yeah, I mean, the utility stuff, I guess if you look at a Binance and you have their BNB coins, you're getting a discount on your commissions. I like the value, stuff like that. I think it'll be a while before we're really valuing companies in the true fashion as a security token. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. The whole issue with ICOs is that they look good in theory, but the problem is that they require an actual working product for it to have any value. And even then, the value is essentially fully dependent on how utilized that token is. A good example of this would be like Omise Go, right? So Omise is an established company that does several $billion in transactions a year for like business to business transaction settlements, and they still don't have a working network. And their plan was to move all of their transactions onto their Omise Go token and their blockchain network, and it still doesn't work. So does that mean that Omise Go should technically have no value since it's not being utilized? Versus if they had done it as a security token, then it's like, okay, you own, a security in this system, so it has that value already baked in because they are an established company and they have financials to back this stuff up. Even if the network's not running yet, there is that expectation. So I think, at least in the US in particular, I think it'll move almost exclusively to security token offerings just because of that gray area with ICOs that you can't value them. Like there's no way to accurately say this token is worth this amount until you have a working product. Now that's the thing. If there was an ICO that was, they're 95% of the way done on their project and they're doing an ICO to get their tokens out there, that's one thing, because if it's already in the works, then fine. But no projects are doing it that way. So I don't know. It should be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah,
and I think that's an interesting point. When I was at a conference in New York a couple of weeks ago, there was a big venture capitalist guy there, and I actually questioned, while I was on stage, I asked him that question. He's like, do you think, given the downward trend and success of a lot of these ICOs this year, would you rather see a company start, do what they say they're going to do, actually perform, establish whatever, line of revenue that they can achieve at that early onset before they actually hit an ICO? And, I think against the grain of the way I was thinking about it, he said, no. He's like, I really don't care, because we have the mental fortitude to digest an idea and business plan and be able to make the bet that, this thing is going to go. Right. And if they don't, then we're going to take over the company and we're going to do it ourselves, which is a big risk too, I guess, as a VC, if you have that options with seats on the board. But I was shocked to see. I would have liked to have seen a lot more people say, not use the ICO as a fundraiser, and then hopefully in a year, or 6 months, a year, 2 years, they actually can get that project off the ground and running. I'd rather see an ICO personally, right? I'm not a venture capitalist, but I'd personally rather see somebody put a plan in motion. And I don't care if they're only making, $100,000 a year, $1 million a year. Let me see something, right? Let me know that you can do it, and have a track record that I could try to evaluate to see if you guys can, if you
Yeah.
are set to win.
Yeah, show that you can actually create some sort of value instead of just asking for money, right? Show that you can, you're creating some sort of value add for the ecosystem, for the users. I think is pretty important. I think just for the health of the space, at least, if not, from an investor standpoint.
I sometimes,
Oh, go for it, Jason.
I was just say, I kind of sometimes wonder though if we've moved away from the original concept of the ICO, which is to help the small business before they have a working product. I mean, it's tough to get in front of a VC or kick down some of these old, legacy firms, and whether they want to, sometimes the VCs will come in and want a huge part of the project. Sometimes the bankers just, it's tough to get a priority to raise X amount of money. And I wonder if we're getting away from, with these huge ICOs and all the attention from the regulators, that now we're viewing ICOs as competing with, taking a company public, which I think the whole point was to say, hey, if you got an idea, you want to start working on some technology, you don't need to go spend a ton of money or a couple $100,000 by paying lawyers and getting Reg D offerings and putting all that stuff together. You can go raise $500,000 and get started. And I think that we've kind of gotten away from that whole idea. The crowdfunding kind of is where it started. And now it's just, I think we're just moved it into trying to tokenize the entire IPO process.
Yeah, I just see these projects that come out promise utility, but they don't actually promise anything, right? They put it in a white paper that they're not legally binded to, and then these people that are just suckered into buying into it. I think you're completely right on that is what an ICO is for, and I think there's a place for it. I think that these projects need to have a little bit more of a some sort of promise to their holders, right? That's kind of why I see it,
Because because even if you are offering, a handful of smaller investors, what's the deal? If you are going to try to offer them some sort of equity or return down the road, if they invest in their project before you raise $1 million or before you have a you're on first or second base, you're essentially selling equity in your company if that's how you're advertising yourself.
Yeah. So let's bring up an example right here. Economy, right? For those that are not aware, they did an ICO in 2016. I think they raised 10 million, and they had a white paper that showed they were going to be that their token represents equity. Well, they removed that. Their token was just going to be utility. Then, after they raised their money, they came out with this new paper.
They removed that both after they raised their money, right?
So after they raised money, they took away the promise and created a utility token. So
It's criminal.
yeah. So what they did now is, as of 2 weeks ago, they issued a blog post saying that they're discontinuing their utility token. Their ICN is what the token ticker is. So what they did their ICO on, they're actually discontinuing that token and reissuing it as a security token, offering a buyback to holders at a 13% premium if exchanges stop support of it, because it's a security now. They'll buy it back at a 13% premium. So
I wouldn't even just follow that one.
I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, at least this is what they should have done outright, but they just saw the money and they didn't care about their users.
Yeah,
So
they managed 100 million under assets in like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible, and it probably, I mean, with $10 million raise, I mean, you think they'd be able to, but I'm not too fond of that. They changed it twice already. So without these security tokens, without any sort of promise or framework in place, they can do that. Well, who says they can't just turn it back to a utility token or say the token's done? I mean, they very easily could have done either of those again. But I think it'll be interesting because they're the first ones to do this, but I don't think they're going to be the last, turning it into a security. These utility tokens are clearly security tokens for the most part. And I think it'll be interesting to see which ones kind of go that route and how these exchanges, I mean, these exchanges seem to be fighting for that next security trading platform. Look, Coinbase's broker dealer, Binance is launching a security trading platform in Malta. I don't know who else. I mean, there's about a half a dozen other banks, creating exchanges for securities. I think it'll be interesting, but it's kind of weird to see another shift from economy, and I'm kind of curious who's going to be next to do that.
Yeah, you followed that story pretty good.
Well, one
So,
other
Chris,
thing, one other thing that I did want to talk about is that these projects that, and some of them are legitimately good projects, like very, very good, have nice long-term feasibility. The tech is really awesome. And then they go and do an ICO. It's like, okay, so you do an ICO for a project that has a lot of potential, that doesn't work, that's not completed. And you drum up all this hype and you get all these people that are talking about how amazing it's going to be. And then the reality is this project is 5 years out. How in the world are you going to expect your user base that you are building off of this ICO and having your token trading around on an unusable project? How are you going to keep that momentum up? How are you going to keep getting new business interested in your project if you burn all of that at the start? And I mean, some of these projects, like Tron, for instance, say what you will about the project, it is what it is, but their roadmap is 20 years. 20 years until they have their full product. How in the world is that going to last off of an ICO? So that's the other thing that I always have a bit of an issue with, that it would be nice if the ICO was kind of like a final round of funding prior to the product actually launching. If you're at 90% complete on your finished product, not even necessarily an MVP, but just a finished product, then sure, go with an ICO, because then you're not going to be burning those bridges with your enthused customer base that you're trying to build. So that's the other thing that I think, if people shift their mindset into tokens as securities and companies doing STOs rather than ICOs, that might help with the situation. But it is interesting. I am curious to see how some of these projects keep the flame alive. So I guess we'll see over the next couple of years, but I think that's probably going to end up killing a lot of projects that have done these ICO raises.
Yeah, and
I
how
think
could it
that's
not? I
an
mean, who wants
interesting
to who wants to get it? Who wants to invest in something with the hopes of years down the road at doing something? I don't know anybody that would. Why would you put your money in something like that? It seems ridiculous.
Pretty good marketing, probably. They get fooled in the marketing. I think is what's just happening, time and time again, without any sort of. I think the space is definitely maturing because we're seeing less money raised from public ICOs and more from private and from security tokens. I think people are kind of wising up to the idea that it's been a year, it's been 3 years or 2 years for some of these, and there's still nothing to show. Which I think just kind of lends into the fact that security tokens, I think, was going to fuel this next run up. I think all these different securities being tokenized on these different platforms, these different networks. If it's Ethereum, Aeon, or hopefully we see Bitcoin start building those layers on top.
Yeah, Alec, and then what you've talked about, BTC starting to be used for
There's
these ICO fundraising. I was starting to see that come through in the headlines now. You were talking about that months ago.
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin, I think you're going to see, consolidation to the strongest chain. If that's monetary policy or if that's just the security tokens, why wouldn't you want to be on the most secure, censorship-resistant chain? And
Yeah,
that's
that's
Bitcoin. It's just, colored coins have been out forever, but there's new protocols like RGB protocol being worked on. I think it's a ways out, but there's like a forex of Bitcoin like Raven Coin that wants to. It's pretty much a Bitcoin that has the option to you can securitize, you can tokenize securities in a much simpler and efficient way. But yeah, I think we're gonna see that move, and this real estate deal, 30 million. Is being built on Ethereum, and I think it's kind of a race between these chains. Like even some of these less decentralized ones, I couldn't really say too much, but from a technical standpoint, but like you have like VeChain and all these different supply chain solutions. I think it'll be interesting because you're going to see a race to build these security tokens on top of it, and whoever has the most is going to be the most secure, and there's going to be way too much money on it. To be beaten. Which I think is kind of interesting too, because then you kind of have to take that into account on these different chains on when you're trading and investing, right? You don't just invest in these securities on top of them, but you actually invest in you see $30 million is tokenized on Ethereum. Well, what happens when there's a half a dozen of those in a week being tokenized in Ethereum? Then you kind of have to take that into account when you're investing in these projects. You don't invest in the projects, you invest in the chain that they're secured on, which I think is very, very interesting because you're actually investing in the infrastructure of these, of the tokenization process and the trading process, the exchange. Everything. You're investing in everything, not just the asset itself. You're investing in the exchanges and every other component that's required for securities and the exchange of them.
Yeah, no, it's very eloquently said, Alec. You got a lot of points there.
Yeah, we can kind of leave it at that. Maybe we can just kind of say what are you guys looking for price wise? Are you guys getting involved here at these prices? I personally have been getting involved in a lot of these, a few of these coins that I've been kind of picking out for the last year. I'm trying to, average down here, picking up a little bit of Bitcoin in this consolidation. But what are you guys really doing? What's your final thoughts on the marketplace?
Brennan's kind of had the right idea on while BTC is not moving, there's some alpha that you can generate when some of these alts get knocked down. So we've just been playing around with some of those. Salt's had a decent little move from its rock bottom prices, so we've been getting a little bit more involved there. What else, guys? Were we buying? We haven't done much on Ripple. But there's some movement on the alts. I think maybe we have to kind of rock the car the wrong way. Like when it's stuck in the snow, you got to rock the car sometimes the other way to get it out. I hope we just need something to get us outside of this range. And I kind of wonder if it's a breakdown first before we break back up.
Jason, you get a lot of snow in Florida these days? No change times, just rocket.
Yep.
Like we said earlier, over the last month, you've had, Bitcoin only, is up 3.6%. If you do a monthly on Ethereum, which is, what I've been trading more of, it's a 16.25%. So a lot of these altcoins are making a little bit more difference. I've actually shifted some of my miners to start mining some of the smaller ones that are like the projects. And like yesterday, converted some of my rigs over to start mining Aeon, and so far I'm getting great rewards for it. It's a cheap stock, but if it happens to get the gravity that I think it might, the trajectory on it might be great. So mining for some of these things when I'm not really trading is just shifting some of those things around. So I'm kind of doing a little bit more of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, you got anything to say, Chris?
No, I'm just swing trading alts right now because that's the only thing that's seeing movement. So
yeah,
got my core long on BTC that I've been sitting on. I know where my risk is at on that. So just trying to accumulate some more Bitcoin in the meantime. So.
All right. Well, if you want to get involved with this, go to blockedgecapital.com. You could probably talk a little bit more, Jason, but you trade twice a week. People can join you. You trade crypto, Forex, pretty much whatever's moving. You got a course. Is there anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, just for, some people maybe just get started in trading or in crypto. We've been kind of training traders for a while, and we trade a little bit of everything from Forex to futures. Brennan's background was equities. Ran a rates desk and was a bond guy for 10 years. So definitely a lot of experience kind of helping traders trade directionally. So we're doing that in crypto now also. So like Alex said, it's blockedgecapital.com, and then under the education tab is kind of some of the services we offer. But if nothing else, you guys should just join the chat room because we're talking everything markets. It's free to join the chat. That's probably the best way to get involved with us.
Well, all right. Till next time, guys.
All
All right,
right.
take care,
It
boys.
was a pleasure. See you, boys.